Good. Just move the Zoom controls, man.
They're the best.
All right. So do I get started now, Kyla?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So I have the design file pulled up right here. And before we start coding, what I typically do is I like to study the design file. And I like to break it down. I like to identify my elements before I actually code them. So in this case, since I have Zoom up, I'm going to use their drawing tool like I always do. And right off the bat, I can see this is my header right here. Let me just select the body. So this is the entire body. The green thing is the header. I have my main right here. Oops, sorry. I have to undo that. This is my main. I'm not going to include the footer because that's something else. So we're going to identify the footer down here. So now I have my body element, my header element. Yeah, my body, header, main, and we have the footer. Breaking it down even further, now I can see that this hero section, I can probably use a section tag right here. And this looks like an H1 because it's the biggest header text. Right here, I'm trying to think if I'm going to make this a P tag or just an H3. I'll probably use a header tag because we have smaller text down here in the cards. And this is definitely a button. Since they're grouped together, I'm probably going to use a div to group them like that. And going back to the header, I can identify my nav item. So I'm going to wrap that in the nav tag. I see in the header, I see a logo and an H, maybe an H3 or H4, because it looks very similar to this, the hero text. So I'm going to group those in a div. Then we have the image and the header text. So below, I see another opportunity to use a section tag. In that section tag, I have a div, and these cards are all divs. And it looks like they're spread out nicely. And so I'm definitely going to use Flexbox there. So I'm gonna use a flex container like that. We have another header text here, and it looks like it's also an H3, similar to the hero text that we see. And I think the last thing is, well, not the final thing, but we have the footer. This looks like it's either space between or space around or space evenly. So I'm just going to group them in probably a nav tag as well, because they're all links. They all link to a different page. And this is just, down here is just a regular P tag with a copyright symbol. Breaking down each card, I see an image. I'm going to put a box around it because really that's just, it's a box. I know I can style the border radius to make it round. We see another header here and another P tag. And then finally, we have a button. So looking at this layout, I've already identified my elements. I used to do this when I was starting out, and that's why I showed you guys in yesterday's stand-up how to use borders to kind of like have a nice visual of where, like how to lay like pretty much just how to see a visual representation of your elements. So when you're flexing them, you know what's being spaced between or what's being aligned left, aligned flex start or flex end. But after a while, you just can kind of just have it in your head, and you can start like dissecting it in your head. So I'm going to clear all these drawings and we're going to start coding. All right. Let me stop this. Come on. Okay. Cool. So let's go in our HTML section. I'm going to drop this down. We're not styling yet. We said that we have a body tag. So I'm going to say body, press tag. And there we go. Thanks, Ivan. And in the body, we have our header, which is where our nav's going to go. I said I'm going to wrap the image and the I don't know, maybe an H3 in a div. So I'm just going to put these here, maybe an H3, and I think it's called tiny. And I'm just typing it like this because visually we already saw what it looks like. We have a div, we have a nav tag. In the nav tag, I'm just going to refer to it. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements. And so in CodePen, you can also use emit. And so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to say I need 5 A tags, so A times 5. Header. Okay, I think that completes our navigation. Now, how I personally like to code is I write out the HTML for one part of the website. So for example, if I'm building out the nav, I like to code that out first, including the styles. So I think that's what I'm gonna do today. So let me just fill out these, let me get the assets. Brand mark is here. Let's put that in the source. And in the alt, I'm gonna say logo. And our nav links are buy, rent, sell, sign, and join. Okay, so buy, rent, sell. I think sign in, was that one word? 2 words. Then finally we have join. I'm gonna put the appropriate tags. I'm not sure if CodePen can do this, but I'm gonna try to select a lot of them. Oh. Well, that wasn't so efficient because they're all different words, but I'll say buy, rent, sell, sign in, join. Okay. With the div that's surrounding the image and the H3, I'm going to give it a class of logo because I want to style that later. So now, okay, what do we flex here? That's the first question. We know we're going to use Flexbox, but what do we flex?
We flex the whole header.
Yeah. So let's do that right now. First, let's just make sure the body has a background of white. And then let's target the header. We don't need to give it a class because it's pretty unique as it is. There's only one header. So we can just target the header. Cool. So let's say display flex. Okay. Also, if you look at the design file, we see that there's a blue bar up here. So I'm going to grab that blue color right here. And if I'm going to use this blue again and again, what I like to do is I put a comment up here and I say colors. Start another comment. And actually, I don't like that. Let's do this. Colors. And I'm going to say blue. Oops. Blue, we have the white, we have the light gray. I'm just going to put it here in CodePen just so it's easier. I don't have to keep switching tabs. What's this light blue, light gray? Yeah, see, I'm forgetful. That's why I need that. Light gray. Then I'm going to grab the gray. And then finally, we have our black. Cool. Now we have the colors here. I can just go up here and grab. I don't need to keep switching tabs. So I'm going to grab the blue, and we're going to add that blue border at the top right now. So um, I saw some of your projects, and some people, they created a div and they gave it a background of the blue and they styled the div to place it up here. But the easiest way to accomplish that is just to say border top. Oops. Border top. I think it was 8 pixels solid, and then give it the blue. So now that we have that border top, I noticed there's some spacing around the body of this, spacing around the window, and by default, that's just the browser default behavior. So we can get rid of that by saying margin 0, because by default, browsers just have that small margin around surrounding the viewport. Okay, now we have the border going across. That tells me that the header doesn't need a width, because by default it's already taking up the full width of the viewport. So the next thing I'm going to style is, let's see.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the border top, can that be applied also to the body instead of just the header, or would you suggest combining it with the header only?
I would suggest combining it with the header only,
Okay.
because yeah, it looks, from the design file, it looks like it belongs more to the navigation bar rather than the whole body. So, but yeah.
I also did a horizontal line instead of making it a border, because I didn't realize you can do border top.
Yeah, you can do, there's border bottom, border right. But if you want to give it a border all around,
You
you can
just say
just say
border.
border. Yeah,
Okay.
cool. Any questions? Any other questions? If not, let's go ahead and start styling the logo. Now there's 2 ways we can put, the problem is tiny is down here and we want it next to the logo. There's 2 ways we can do this. The shortest way is display flex the logo. When you display flex a container, just like the div here, it turns everything inside it. It turns all the direct children into a inline block. And inline block is what allows it to sit next to each other like this. If we didn't have that, by default, any header tag, any H tag is this display block by default. So if I put a border 1 pixel solid red on the H3, you'll see that it's going to go all the way across the full width of the containing div. And this is the containing div. Okay. Oops. Oh no, that's not what I want. No, not add to Notion. Okay, so let me remove that border. Okay, so let's put back the display flex. I only have 1 image, but I want to be more specific, so I'm going to say any image inside the logo class. I want to give it a width of maybe 50 pixels. We're just eyeballing this. And then maybe a height of 50, so it's a perfect square. Maybe a bit smaller than that. There we go, that looks good. Now, since we have, now we have another problem. Tiny is down here, I think we wanted it centered. Yeah, it looks like it's centered. So since we added display flex to the logo, we can use more flex properties to center it. Can anyone guess how we can center it?
Align Item.
Yeah, align item center. There we go. So now what we want to do is we want to center the nav items or the nav. So we're going to select in the header, we have a nav. So we're going to select the nav inside the header to be more specific. And we're going to say, actually not yet. That's supposed to be in the header. So the header, display flex, we're going to do the same thing because we want to align them to that. We want to align it to the logo and the text. Align item center. Now they're perfectly aligned. What we want to do now is we want the nav to go all the way to the right, right? So we're in the header. The header has two direct children, the div class logo and the nav, which has all these nav links. So I want to put a space between these, and I'm going to go to the header, the parent element. Currently, the header is our flex container. And so we want to flex their direct children. So we can say justify content space between. That puts that all the way to the right. Cool. Yeah, it looks like our nav is coming together. Now just quickly, I want to add my A tag here, and I want to remove that underline. And to do that, we're going to say text decoration none. Oops. And we're going to give it a color of, what's the gray? I think it's this. Yeah, that looks about right. We're also going to give the logo a color of, now question, why did that work? I'm targeting the div, but it colored my H3. So the reason why that was colored, even though I didn't,
because it's part of the logo class, right?
Yeah, so that's inheritance at work. So whatever text I put inside the div, it's going to be gray. So I can add a p tag here, say hello, and it's going to be gray. So that's inheritance, which we learned on, I think, on Wednesday. So now, since I'm already, I want to put a space between the text and the image. So instead of targeting the H3, I already have my image, my logo image targeted here. So I can just give it a margin right of, I don't know, maybe 10. Yeah, that looks good. Should just keep it to 8. Cool. Okay, so now what we want to do is, we see in the design file that there's a space on the left, there's a space on the right. Now, should I use padding or should I use margin?
Margins.
Margins.
Okay, so we have the header here. We can say margin right. Let's give it, just give it a right pixel. Margin right, margin left, 50 pixels. Now the thing is, that gives us another problem because we want the border to go all the way across, right? In this case, if we want the border to still take up the full width while giving our navigation some breathing room, in this case, what we do want to use here is padding. Because padding, remember, is a space inside the border. Margin is a space outside the border, so that's why it's our border shrunk. Let's see, and we have our nav selected. We're just going to give this a width of, just going to guesstimate it, 300 pixels, and we're going to, so the nav has A tags in it, right? So it has children. So we're going to say display flex and give it space, justify content space between. So just so you can kind of see it, let's give it a border, 1 pixel solid red. And as I change the width, it's going to keep that space between. So no matter what width I give it, it's going to be spaced. I don't need to give it a margin left or anything. So that's that. Okay. Moving on to our, let me see the design file. Okay, so it looks like we need to give our header a height. Just gonna estimate it. It looks like it's about 80 pixels. That looks about right. And just to see it, border bottom, 1 pixel solid red. You can see that it's perfectly spaced. Okay, now moving on to the image. Any questions so far? Everyone good?
Did you finish writing the HTML?
Not yet. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's just my personal preference. I like to build it out, HTML plus the style in,
okay.
yeah, like one section at a time.
Okay.
Some people do prefer HTML, like all HTML first, and then they start styling it one by one. Yeah, but yeah, like I said, there's just a personal preference. Whatever works for you, you should stick with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the header. We just finished styling our navigation bar. So looking at the design file, I can see I'm definitely going to use, well, first we need a main tag to contain all of this content between the header and the footer. And inside that, we're going to start creating our hero section. So if we mark that up, it's going to look like main with a section. So we're not going to see anything yet. In the section, we have an H1, looks like another H3 and a button. So we're going to say H1, H3, and a button.
How do you get it to auto fill the closing tags?
To do that, you just type in the element. So if I say button, you just hit tab.
Awesome.
And it does it for you. It works with anything, span, section.
That'll save me 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a time saver, and it prevents human error because sometimes we forget this little slash.
Yes.
Okay, so reimagine home. Okay, we're gonna say reimagine. I think this is where I'm gonna do reimagine. Was it capitalized?
No, it's not.
Find the tiny home of your dreams from the comfort of your couch. Okay.
Home is not capitalized.
And, tiny home. Okay. Thank you. Find the tiny home of your dreams. Was it from your couch?
Close enough.
Yeah, that's good. And then right here it says get started, right? I'll just look. From the comfort of your couch. Okay, get started. Cool. All right, now let's tackle so for the section, I'm gonna give my section a class, and the reason why I'm gonna give it a class is because this bottom section with the cards, that's also gonna be a section, but I want it to be unique. I want the hero section to be a unique, when I style it, I wanna be able to target just that section, right? So I'm gonna give it a class of hero. Okay. And let me just tidy up my HTML real quick. All right. It's just a code pen thing. This. Okay. So now moving on to our hero section. Give it a hero section. We're going to target the hero class. And the first thing I want to do is put the background there. And to grab that background image, hero. Okay. So when it comes to the background properties, there are usually 3 to 4. The most common 3 to 4 background properties are background image, background size, background position, background, was it size, position? Let's stick with these 3 for now. Personally, I use these 3 a lot, and you'll see how we use it. So the first thing is, so when we use an image tag, it looks something like this with the SRC, right? So when we use a background as an image, we don't say SRC. What we actually have to say is URL, and then we put a parentheses. We put some quotes. I'm not sure if we strictly have to use a single quote or if it works with double quotes, but I think this is just a habit of mine to use single quotes. And then we paste our, just make sure we have our semicolon, and then let's paste our URL. So
I use double quotes on mine, and it seemed to work.
oh, it's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
At least it's not picky. Okay, so we have a problem. It's not covering what we want to cover, right? So because right here, it looks like it's taking up almost the full window. Like when we actually get on the landing page, it looks like it's covering the entire window. Like, oh, too much zooming. So the reason why it's behaving like this, it's because this section is only as tall as the content inside it. So what we need to do, let me comment these 2 out for now. What we need to do first is we need to give our hero section, our hero class, we need to give it a height. And let's just, this takes some like experimenting. So let's just start with 500 pixels. And right there, you can see that we have our, the image is starting to show. Now we have a problem. We have another problem because the design file is not only showing the mountain, it's showing the little house and some grass. So how do we get the image to display all that? Well, first, one of the background properties we're going to use is background size. And I almost don't use anything else. Background cover usually takes care of that. As you can see so far, we don't have any horizontal bars. That means we don't have any like elements that are, kind of like leading outside of the layout. Yeah, that's what background cover does. It tries to fit the image as much as possible in your container. And in this case, our container is the section with a class of hero. It doesn't look quite like the design file yet, so because we're not fully seeing the house. So what we can do is we can play around with this, our third background property, which is background position. Now, my go-to is center. And it looks like it's actually good. It looks like it's actually there. Wait a minute. Okay. So here it's showing a bit of water on the right side, and our image is not. what that is telling me is I need to make the height a little bit smaller. So let's just see what that does. Let's make it 450. And there we go. It's starting to look a little bit closer. I also see another issue here because before our navigation bar was perfectly aligned, it was perfectly spaced. Everything was aligned equally, but now there's this extra space. Can anybody guess what's causing that space?
Is it padding?
Close. It is margin.
Margins.
Yeah, so a technique that will help you when you're developing is the inspector tool. So I'm going to inspect that H1. I think this is an H1. So you see the orange bar up top, right above it? And why is it not doing it? Okay, here we go. So that's what's causing that extra space. So if you just imagine without that top margin, our navigation bar is back to being perfectly aligned. And if we hover over that, you see that's exactly this, that white space that we see is exactly the size of that top margin. So one debugging technique I want to show you guys is I'm going to select this element in my inspector tool. You see we have it selected here. That's how you know you're selecting the H1. We're going to go in here in the styles, and we're going to look for, generally if it's italicized like that, you can't play with it. But you can go here in element style, and we can say margin 0. And you can play around with it. You can do all sorts of things. So it looks like margin 0 fixed it. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this, and we need to, we only have one H1, so which is good. Typically you only want to use one H1 per page. So we're going to say margin 0 here. A cool trick that I want to show you guys is we can say margin top 0, margin bottom 0. We can say margin right, say 20 pixels, margin left 50 pixels. Okay, why is it not working? Did I misspell something?
It's because it's part of the
Part of the hero, so you have to
Hero?
say
Yeah.
hero space.
Let's do it again.
I guess not.
Oh, you know what? It's because we still have this turned on. It saved it. There we go. Okay. All right. So there is a shortcut for this. So if I say margin, I'm going to comment this out for now. Oops. I'm going to comment it out for now. So remember this acronym. It's TRBL, trouble, which stands for top, right, bottom, left. So right now it has a margin top of 20, and then margin right of 40, margin bottom of 20, margin left of 40. So this is a shorthand for writing margin, so you don't have to keep typing margin top, margin bottom, so on and so forth. There is even a shorter way of doing this. If you say margin 20 and then 40, how the browser reads this is margin 20 pixels top and bottom. This is left and right. Okay, so okay, let's remove that and let's go back to completing the demo. Okay, so hero one, okay, so that's for H1. Let me see. Okay, I actually forgot to do something in my HTML markup, and that's grouping all these the H1, my H3, and the button. I want to group them together. So I'm gonna say div and say div and give that a, in this case, I only have one div, and so I don't really need to give it a class. So what I can say here is hero div, and we'll give it a padding left of, I think we gave it 50. There we go. And now we're aligned. And then the hero section, if we look at the design file, it looks like it has a space, quite a good amount of space right here. And so do we want to use padding or margin for this?
I think that one will be margin.
Margin? Okay, so let's see. And would that go in the hero, or would that go, where would that margin go?
That will go for hero div.
The hero and the div, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't the margin increasing the white space though? That the header is in?
If we put it in the hero, it will increase. So let's try that right now. Margin top. Let's give it 80 pixels. But if we give it to our hero div, it will. Oh.
I would just do the same thing. Okay, so padding, I guess.
Yeah. Personally, I like using padding when I need space inside the border. So let's just give that a padding top. There we go. And it looks like all the text inside here is white. And so we're going to go back to our hero section, our hero class, and we're going to give that a color of white. And we'll let inheritance do its job, because everything inside here is going to be white. Okay, and now let's move on to, I think it has, there we go, text scale 60 and then 30.
Wait, something went wrong here. Can I see the hero div code that you have? Padding top. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so if I open my dev tools, we can see those padding.
Okay, I just I put padding top, and then the next one was padding, so it kind of canceled out the top.
Oh, gotcha. So we gave it a font size of 60. And then we'll give our, let's see, looks like, I've been doing my, oh, cool, thank you. So if we look at the design file and we identified our H3s, right? This is an H3. This looks like an H3. Right now we're just trying to complete the MVP, so let's just focus up here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna select all the H3s, and typically you want the most general selector all the way at the top. The more specific ones go here at the bottom, because the way CSS is read is from top to bottom. And it's just easier to read when you go back to your code later. So I'm going to say H3. Font size 30 pixels. It doesn't look right. Let's try 25. Looks good to you guys? And let's also give our H3 margin 0 because it's causing that extra white space there. Cool, that looks good. And yeah.
I feel like it's a little hard to judge too because you still have the old default font on instead of having it at Lato, which is misleading because sometimes depending on the typeface, the sizing will be really different.
That's true. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, we can import the font right now. So let's go add a head. And I'm not going to add the link tag because I can get that directly from Google Fonts. And I believe the link was somewhere down here. Here we go. So if you guys had issues in getting your fonts to become, to getting that thin weight, I'm going to show you how to get exactly that. So, and this is why we, when we design, we push you guys to stay with Google Fonts because it's free and because it's easier to use for development. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna click select this font. It will bring up like a box down here. And this is the link that we wanna import, but not quite yet. We don't have the weight that we want. So how we get that is if you click on customize and the Sprint Challenge document tells us that we need light, we need regular, and we need bold. Now, if we go back to the embed, now we see that we have 300, 400, 700. Now this is the link that we want to import in our CodePen. So I'm going to put that in the head. It's not going to style everything quite yet, but we can put that in the body and say font, family, Lato, or Lato, and now we have that. And we'll just give it a backup of sans serif. Now we can start styling things. Okay, it looks like everything is light except for this is regular. The button is bold. The header is bold, and by default, all headers are bold. So let's go, I'm gonna go back to my H3 selector so that I can make all the H3s light. And we're gonna say font weight 300. And I think all of our A tags are also font weight 300. So I'm just gonna copy and paste that. Probably would have been easier if I typed it out instead. Okay. Cool, it's coming together. So one thing that stands out to me is this text. In the design file, it creates a new line down here. So there is a couple of ways we can solve that problem. One is we have that group of text with a button. We have that inside the div. So what we can do is make the div, we can adjust the width of that div. So if we go down here to our selector, we can say width of, let's try 250. It's not working out. Let's try 300. It's not working. 350, 380. And where does it break? Let's see, dreams. So right now I can see that although this is what we want, the H1 is, not aligned the way we want it to. So what that tells me, I need to stop using the width, and I can just kind of hack it from here. And we're going to go to that body text, and right after dreams, we're just going to say BR for a line break. There we go. Okay, let's check the spacing. It looks like it has, the H1 has a bottom margin of, I don't know, maybe 10 pixels, looks like, maybe 14, 15. But what I'm seeing, I'm trying to look for patterns in the design file. And one pattern I see right now is that this space, it's not going to be exact, and this space is equal. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a top margin and bottom margin on this text right here. Less work. Okay, so that is our hero section, the H3 inside of our hero section. So I don't have that selected anywhere, so I'm going to put that right here. Hero H3 margin. I'm going to use a shorthand, so I'm going to say 10 pixels and 0. Okay, that's not working for me, and so I'm going to give this 20 pixels. And again, I'm going to look for a pattern, and I'm going to draw a line from the bottom of this button. And maybe I'm just OCD like that, but that's how I would do it. And okay, and kind of visualize that. Oops, and zoom controls. Okay, so it looks like we are just using too much padding top. So I'm going to decrease that. And that also could be our window. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, so let's use 60 instead. Okay, that's looking better. And I need to decrease the bottom margin on, okay, that's looking a lot better. And the margin top, maybe just 5. Okay. And the final thing we need to style is, it's actually not final, there's one more thing. But we're going to style the button. We're going to give it a background of white, border none, because by default buttons have borders. We're going to get, it has a blue color, and so, sorry for the background noise. The blue color, font, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then it has a space around the text, right? And it also looks like it has a border radius. And so we're going to apply that right now. Let's add the border radius first. It looks like it's about 5 pixels. And then we'll just give the button a padding of 20. And let's give this a font size of maybe it's 25. That's too much. I think the other one was 21. So go to our instructions, 18. I believe it's 18. And let's decrease the padding to maybe 16. Cool, now it's coming together. If we draw a line, oh, pretty close. Pretty close. I believe this should be a button, a default like style on a button, but this should have a cursor pointer. So when you hover over it, you see the glove finger, the hand thing. Okay, and so now the only thing left for us to do is to style this join. There's many ways to do it. We can use A, and there's plenty of ways to do this. So we can go last of type. And I'm not sure if this is gonna work, but let's give it a color of blue. Oh, it worked. Another way we can do this is we're using a pseudo selector called nth of type. And since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 A tags, I'm going to say it's the 5th A tag that you see. So if I comment this out, that should still work. And it doesn't work because I didn't actually give it the color. And there we go. But the easiest way to do that is if we give that A tag a class of, I'm going to give it a class of active, just because from the design file, it looks like join is the page that we're currently on. Because of the copy and the CTA right here, it looks like they're trying to get us to join. So that's why I'm going to call the class active. It's the active page. So if we copy this code, paste it down here, uncomment it, and then give it that class of active, then that should work. Now what we can do is as you switch to different pages on your website, let's say we're in the cell page, you can give cell a class of active, and that would show you that's your active class, or that's the page you're on. Let's see, let's put it back there. Now the final thing I want to show you guys is there is another creative way to align this group right here. And let me just look at my markup and let's break it down again. Okay, so we have a section with a div inside it, and the div has 3 direct children. And I'm already using Flexbox language, direct children. It looks like our div can be a flex container. And then we can make the H1, the H3, and the button flex items. So the reason why I want to show you guys this is there's more than one way to solve this. And that's really how it is with HTML and CSS. So let's look for that div, and this is that div. So I'm going to give this display flex. Now, put all the flex items in a row. So what I can do to make them stack on top of each other is say flex direction column. And we can give this a width of 500 pixels. And looks like my button is stretching all the way across. So we're gonna give the button a max width of say 200 pixels. That's a little too much. Let's say 160, 140, and that looks about right. And I'm gonna comment this out. We're gonna remove the alignment. It looks like the, okay. And you know what, so we can better visualize this, I'm gonna add a border, 1 pixel solid. Let's use green this time. Oh, fail. Okay. Div, and I'm actually gonna put that somewhere else so we can better see it. Hero H1. Okay. So what I'm about to do is give this div a height of 300 pixels. And if I say justify content space between, that will distribute it equally. And all I need to do is just play around with the height. And there you go. And that is our MVP. So sorry for the noise.
So this
Any
is
questions?
the alternative to putting margins. No, yeah, putting margins on the find tiny home of your dreams. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, that's definitely an alternative to, you know, like moving the margins one by one, pixel by pixel. If you see a pattern, like I said, I try to look for patterns. If you see equal spacing, that's opportunity for you to use space between, or space evenly, or space around.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason why I don't know, I personally don't use the other space values, like space around, space evenly. Usually space between does the job for me, and that's just my personal preference, and less things to remember.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah, anything else? Try to clean this up.
So if we wanted to implement some of this, would you recommend like redoing like our submission, or should we like make a copy of it and then like edit that copy? So we still have like,
Yeah, I would do that. Yeah.
we can like see the progress, I guess.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I would do that.
Okay.
I just like make another copy and just like try it again. Yeah. If I showed you my older pens, you would see that it's pretty like messy.
Does the fork button, does that create a copy?
Yeah. So if I send this link to you and you fork it, it copies the exact same code, but it will be right here. It will say Kelsey. Yeah, it will be yours.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, just doing one more check. All the head, the indentation, just running through, making sure that my code is clean. And the reason why is when someone reviews your code, you want them to be able to read it easier. And so I have my header. Typically what I'll do is after my header, I'll just create a space between my header and my main. And then that, and if I had a footer, I would have the footer here. And if it's a big file, I would leave a comment and say, I would say body, or I would say main section. If I had more than one section tag, I would say hero section. I would break it up like that. So whoever's like reviewing my code, or if I'm collaborating with someone and they want to read my code, they can easily scan it. I'll be like, cards section, or marketing section, could be about section. So very similar to how we're taught to organize our files in Figma. Structuring, making sure your HTML markup is clean and easily readable. that's how we has the same importance as organizing and naming our Figma files and our groups and our elements. We didn't even use these, the other colors. Yeah, there is another trick to aligning things, to always aligning things, and that's having a max width. It would take way too long to code that right now, but if I showed you guys,
I just noticed this website was 300 lines of code. Pretty cool.
anyway, well, yeah, we'll get into when we get into responsiveness. What I like to do is I like to create a class called container. And then my container will be centered, margin 0 auto. That's how you center elements. And then I would give it a max width of maybe 1400. So no matter how much if a user has a really wide screen, so for example, if we did this, right? You don't want that kind of behavior. So yeah, and this container class would typically go, I think I would put it just for like demo's sake. Oops, container. And if we scroll all the way out, okay, not sure why that didn't work. Oh, it's an A. So I'm gonna try to zoom out again. There you go. You see how it has like constraints. It won't go anywhere wider than anything wider than 1400 pixels. And I would put that container, my container would be the one creating this left spacing here for me. And what I would do is like when I create different sections is I just slap on that container class on it and it would center it and it would give it a max width. But I'm pretty sure we'll cover that next week. And that is all. Sorry we didn't have time to get through the stretch. But if you like, I'll create a separate pen. Like I can fork this. I'll fork this for the MVP, and then I'll create a second version for the stretch.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. Glad you liked it.
I'm about to go knock out. I don't want to coma. So I'll see you guys later.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. I was worried I'd go over, like way over.
All right, awesome. So I think everyone actually was here. So if anyone wants an additional one-on-one, I think you're definitely entitled to that. But if you want to just start your weekend early, you are welcome to do that as well. We're going through and submitting the forms. You can access your score and any feedback and notes on your assignment in your dashboard. Anybody else with questions or anything? Does anybody? I guess if you want a one-on-one, you can ask for that, like in the channel or through a direct message. Okay. Good to go.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right, everyone. Have a
Bye.
good weekend.
Bye,
You
guys.
too.
Have a good weekend.
Bye, everyone.